All right, we rolling. It's Freedom Phil. Like and subscribe. Today's topic's going to be, I don't think how many people realize how much Elon buying Twitter really affected the job market as much as they could ever imagine. It's not freedom of speech as much as what everybody saw when the clean out happened. Yeah. Freedom Phil, let's get into it. Hey, turn up the video speed. I was listening to these people talk about some of the layoffs and recessions that are happening, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's what happens when people realize we don't have to, carry that old, DEI nonsense. We don't have to give lip service to things. About the same time that society finally got, partially because people were really sick of it for a while, but it was considered okay to finally push back and say, no, I don't care about this particular issue. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. This thing that happened with, for instance, back in the days of the religious right, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't read this, you can't look at that. People get sick of that. And people did get sick of that. So that kind of went the way of the dodo. And, they got dethroned, disempowered. And we saw the same thing eventually where the other side eventually took over. And now those people have been disempowered and dethroned as well. So we're back to kind of a nice middle ground where hopefully regular work can happen, where being productive, not just being part of a group or a class or a way of thinking. And a lot of this just was able to prosper, under particularly the Obama era was the beginning of it. Like, honestly, you look at race relations prior to 9/11, some black folks getting together with white folks and, bumping uglies and making babies. And even after 9/11 still, because prior to 9/11, who knew what Muslims were? Oh, yeah, I think Muhammad Ali was one of those. Nobody really cared. But I think the damage that was done by the two Afghanistan and Iraq wars was part of the reason we got Obama. In fact, I'd say it's a lot of it, But his legacy was basically all the Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, DEI style nonsense. And then also whatever trait based nonsense becoming something that you have to deal with at work. And then the money from the government that was getting funneled into a lot of these corporations and companies, we care about LGBT. Well, isn't it funny how the minute the money stopped, USAID and all these other things, it seemed like they just stopped caring, right? They never cared. And everybody knows they never cared. It was always a business strategy. And it was a bad business strategy because the vast majority of people aren't that. And it's not that people hate that. It's that they basically don't want you shoving your tail feathers in their face, just like everybody was that way about the religious right. Hey, man, your religion's your thing. Please, can you keep it to yourself? Stop trying to tell me the truth in the way. I always kind of laugh about it. I'm like, well, why is it the truth in a way? Because some people from the desert said it was true. How do you know they're not lying? Because they totally wouldn't. Was it in their own benefit to lie? Well, that's not the point. Interesting. But yeah. You shove your tail feathers in everybody else's face, and eventually people got sick of that. And that's why we're kind of going the other direction, to hopefully a safe, sane middle ground. But bringing it back to Elon Musk and his taking over of Twitter and firing pretty much a lot of the bloat, pretty much all the bloat. Well, guess what happened? Twitter still ran fine. And the fact that he opened it up to everybody else, it didn't become just blue echo chamber. So bad was the purging from that the extremist on the left side made Blue Sky a place where you get purity tested. You have to be lefty enough to be on Blue Sky. And if you're not, a lot of people that go to Blue Sky found out quite quickly that wait a minute, this is boring. I just have to religiously chant the same things. I believe in this. Orange man bad. We all think the same thing. Hey, ho, hey. The same as a fucking religion. So they end up going back to say something like Twitter. And they're where the controversy is, where you could talk to someone you hate. I don't like that person. And so you have a conversation. Actual conversation. Surprise. And that company did fine. Is doing better and better. But that's all a side piece. We bring it back to all the people got fired, all the people that got laid off, all the people who were let go. And the company still runs fine. If you don't think that these corporations took a look at that and said, hey, wait a minute, now that I don't have to keep The DEI hire, I don't care which version of you are, what flavor you are of it, the DEI hire who frankly doesn't get anything done. And I want to tell you something that really did a lot of damage to the image of these tech companies, corporations, and whatnot. When you say a day in the life, these women, these vapid, stupid women. And by the way, sometimes I think that was a psyop to get rid of these people. Like they're like sitting there, a day in the life of my blah blah blah, and I wake up, I go to work, and I have a special cappuccino frappe, whatever custom drink is the fashion at the time, like the joke from The Simpsons, and I put an onion on my belt because that was the fashion of the times, meaning whatever ridiculous shit we're told to do, you do it. And then she goes in there and kind of does a little stretch yoga before working. And then, basically, then they have a little meeting and talk about synergies, but nothing gets done at all, ever. And then eventually we talk a little more. I go back and pretend to do a little work. And then it's lunch. And we take a lunch and it's paid for by the company, blah, 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 blah. And this goes through and it basically gets to doing the same useless shit after lunch. And about till 3:00. And then I have to go early to pick up my child. And this is a person getting paid over $100K a year to be doing basically nothing. Well, meanwhile, and this is one of the actual other reasons that you're seeing a lot of people getting laid off. The H-1B system that was pretty much increased by, was it under Bush, I believe? That has now become center stage because they're like, hey, Sanji, even though he's not as good of a programmer as our local guy, he's willing to work for 70 or 80 and you want 120. So why would we pay you 120? Now, the reality is a lot of times Sanji doesn't really know so much what they're doing. But no offense to people from India, but, you guys still have the issue of being the country that's recognized for, the poop throwing, the poop eating. I mean, come on. I mean, sorry, the quality is not as much. And so, but because the company can save a ton of money, they're going to hire Sanji. They're going to hire some guy from the East Bloc, just like in the trucking world. Why are so many companies, always they're always looking, they don't want experienced people because experienced people actually need to make a decent paycheck because they probably have a wife and kids. No, they just want the person that gets the job done as cheap as possible. Even if they fuck it up, because, well, we're not going to be running this company in 2 or 3 years. What does it matter? We'll make our money and gone. So the enshittification is one thing. Through less quality workers, less quality people. But then it's like, without having to carry all this dead weight and the virtue signaling and all the crap, well, today's LGBT blah, blah, blah. They never cared. And they never cared. Because the minute that the government money stopped, the U.S. aid money, style money stopped, the Obama money basically, that money stopped. Surprise, they all stopped doing it. Also, it was about also at the same time that a lot of people were just sick and tired, once again, of people shoving their tail feathers in your face. Just like the religious right did, the left was doing that, and people were fed up with it. Now, you could say that whether you love Trump or hate Trump, he is a example of what happens. He's not the candidate that was elected because he was the greatest, smartest person in the world. He's the flip-off thing. He's the middle finger candidate. When people get so sick and tired of all the crap they're being forced to do, all the near religious fervent bullshit they're forced to do. Oh my God, DEI this, blah, blah, blah. Just like a Catholic, liturgy or whatever. Hey, holy, DEI, holy. People got fucking so sick of that they're like, they're going the other way. And that is exactly what the corporations are waiting for. Because believe you me, they wanted to fire a lot of you people ages ago. But they were only keeping you because maybe they thought you would try to do some things like, and they fired us because we're black or we're LGBT or I'm a woman. They fired me because I'm a transsexual monkey. Whatever. I don't fucking know. Whatever you identify as, I'm a furry. And by the way, I don't got a problem with the furries or any of the LGBT or any of it. But frankly, that is not why you got hired for a fucking job. Or maybe it was. Truth is, you only got hired as a diversity hire, and now that we don't have this ridiculous criteria, you're now getting laid off. And they're cutting things down. They're cutting the meat down to the bone. And now people talk about, just like they have the AI bubble and all the .com bubble. This is going to be the AI bubble. And now they're like, the AI. So they're going to cut as many people as they can, and then they're going to see if their business still works. And then they'll try to hire back some of the good people. By the way, if you're one of those good people that gets canned, charge ridiculously high rates to keep their business running if they fucking lay you off. But that reality, that simple reality that you're now coming into of now business is going back to what business normally does. Fitter, faster, stronger. Fitter, faster, stronger. And why? Because that's how you make a fucking profit. That's what Elon Musk basically showed everybody with Twitter. Whether you like Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, whether you like his politics or not, him gutting that business, much like we saw back in, what was it, the late 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, with companies that were heavily union, and you have some guy in an era where you're making like less than $5 an hour for sweeping a broom at a normal business. You got some union worker making $30 an hour for pushing a broom. And they're like, well, why the fuck are we doing that? And it's the same thing. It's the same economics. And now that we have permission to get rid of a bunch of people that weren't really doing anything at all to begin with. That's exactly what's happening. Which is ironic because it comes back and the joke is, send them back to McDonald's or send them all back to McDonald's. That's the joke of it. But it's more like, people talking about, you should have learned to code, all that stuff. You should have learned to be a plumber. You should have learned to be an electrician. You should have learned, driving ain't going to be around forever. But with 3 weeks worth of training and then 3 weeks with a driver trainer, that's a hell of a lot faster than learn how to code. And even a lot of coders are getting fucking canned. It turns out that, yes, the program can do a better job than you can. And so ultimately, we're running into a situation where, we're just going through an era where they're gonna cut the numbers. And one could even argue this might have been something that a lot of the leftist companies wanted to do anyways. And if they could do it when Trump's in office, then they can blame, this recession's on Trump. No, actually, ironically, the recession that was left over from Biden and, some of the stimulus that Trump did back in this first administration, we've pretty much got a lot of that under control. But what happened, just like when computers became a normal thing, Clinton had benefited from this, for instance, was that now that everybody was starting to get into the internet, computers and all that, and then once home computers were a perfectly normal thing in the 2000s, surprise, now it's going the other way. Now we don't need a bunch of people to do these very simplistic jobs online. We don't. We have programs to do this. We have H-1Bs to do this. We have other countries to do this. And it could be argued America First policy should be initiated where, hey, if you want to hire a bunch of these other people in other countries to do this work, then it's perfectly fine if we tax you at 70% or more. Let's tax you to the point where you're like, you either build these businesses over in America, especially after telling all these kids, hey, get educated, go spend anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 for your education. Or you could build your company in India, you could build it in China or wherever, but you're going to pay a ridiculous high tariff to do any business in this country. You want access to this market, then you hire Americans. And I know a lot of people, well, tariffs just raise prices. Well, it turns out that you need people that are employed in America so they can pay their student loans, so they can pay their mortgage, so they can pay their things. But if you're going to basically reward people for going overseas, that's what they're going to do. If you're going to reward people for hiring H-1Bs, that's what they're going to do. And so, on one side, yes, I think you need to get some of the regulations. You need to make it easier for people to do business in America. Not make it easier for people to do business, build their business in another country, but then sell to America. If you want to sell products in America, be doing business in America. But, we've turned that into a political right-left issue, which I'm going to be honest about this. If you're pissed off about what Trump's been doing, Obama should have been doing this. Biden should have been doing this. Bush should have been doing this. If you go all the way back to Kennedy was the last person out there who really pushed that line of thinking of fighting for the American, the working man's rights. That was the last guy that really fought for that. So you got to go all the way back to a Democrat in the 60s to get what your government should have been doing. But we're going to go through some hard times. Because a lot of people that were bloat to begin with at these tech companies, these business companies, these whatever, You're going. And just like eventually trucking's going to cease to exist, my industry is going to cease to exist because we're going to have automated vehicles. So then we could even ask the simple question. This is a closing thought. Before you ask people to produce more people so we can produce money for welfare and Social Security and all that other crap, are we going to have a future, a job for these people? Maybe we should have a real conversation about population and maybe that we need to reduce the spending of government. Reduce it. Instead of asking people to produce children into a world where they're not even going to have a job to look forward to. We might be going to a robotic form of UBI eventually. And at that point, what's the point of having a bunch of like double digit, like sub 80 IQ motherfuckers running around? Well, where's my job? Where's my money? Like most people don't, I don't let's be real about it. Most people, if they could get that check from the government, like I heard this story. This guy got injured in the military and he had arm pain, like elbow pain, but you'd see him still working on stuff at his garage. And he was getting like anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 from the government per month. Let's be honest. If most people could collect that check tomorrow, they'd never go to work. That's just the truth of it. That's just the fucking truth of it. Anyhow, this is Freedom Phil. Like, subscribe. I'll read the comments for a quick second. Yo, what's up? Hey, I haven't seen you in a while either. Peace, man. Y'all take it easy.